General Marcus Kane stood at attention in the crystalline chamber of the Galactic Council, his weathered face betraying no emotion as the alien delegates whispered among themselves. The translation devices hummed softly, converting the dozen different languages into something his human brain could process. After 3 years of brutal warfare against the Zephyrian Empire, peace had finally come, but at a price that made his stomach turn. The Thraxian ambassador, a towering insectoid creature with 4 arms and compound eyes, clicked his mandibles as he spoke. "General Kane, your species has proven surprisingly effective in combat. The Council has agreed to honor the ancient tradition of unity bonds to cement this alliance." Marcus knew what was coming. He had studied alien customs during his military academy days, never imagining he would one day be subject to them. The unity bond was more than a marriage. It was a genetic and cultural merger that would tie humanity to the galactic community forever. "You must choose a bride from among the eligible females of our allied species," continued the Thraxian. "This union will symbolize humanity's acceptance into the greater galactic family." The chamber's walls shifted, becoming transparent to reveal an adjacent room where dozens of alien females waited. Marcus had seen many strange sights during the war, but this gathering still made him pause. There were tall, graceful Ilari with their silver skin and luminescent markings, fierce Korthak warriors with their scaled hides and predatory grace, delicate whisper folk who seemed to float rather than walk. Each species had sent their finest representatives, beings who embodied their people's ideals of beauty, intelligence, and genetic superiority. The politics were obvious. Whichever species he chose would gain tremendous influence over humanity's integration into galactic society. "Take your time, General," the council leader said, her tentacles swaying hypnotically. "This decision will echo through the generations." Marcus walked slowly along the viewing wall, his military boots echoing in the chamber. The alien females postured and displayed their various attributes. The Ilari female demonstrated her telepathic abilities by creating stunning mental images visible to all. The Korthak warrior showed her combat prowess with a series of lightning-fast martial arts forms. Others displayed their technological achievements, artistic talents, or diplomatic skills. Then Marcus saw her. She sat quietly in the corner, seemingly ignored by the others. Where the other females were tall and imposing, she was shorter and rounder. Her species, the Valorians, were known for their incredible intellect and emotional depth, but they were often dismissed by other species as physically inferior. Her skin had a warm, golden hue, and her large, dark eyes held a sadness that spoke to something deep in Marcus's soldier's heart. The other aliens had whispered about her when she arrived. "The fat one," they called her in their various languages, not realizing that Marcus's translation device picked up their cruel words. They spoke of how the Valorians had sent their least attractive representative, perhaps as an insult to humanity. But Marcus saw something else entirely. While the others performed for his attention, she simply watched him with those intelligent eyes. When their gazes met, she didn't look away or try to impress him. Instead, she gave him a small, sad smile that seemed to say she understood exactly what this was, a political transaction dressed up as romance. "I have made my decision," Marcus announced. Turning back to the council, the chamber fell silent. Every alien delegate leaned forward, eager to hear which species would gain humanity's favor. The political implications were enormous. An alliance with the Ilari would grant access to their vast trade networks. Choosing the Korthak would signal humanity's military ambitions. The Whisper folk controlled ancient technologies that could advance human civilization by centuries. Marcus pointed through the transparent wall. "I choose her." The silence stretched on for several heartbeats before exploding into chaos. Alien voices rose in confusion and outrage. The translation devices struggled to keep up with the rapid-fire exchanges. The Valorian, the Thraxian ambassador's compound eyes glittered with disbelief. "General, perhaps you misunderstood the significance of this choice. The Valorians are, that is to say, they offer little in terms of strategic advantage. She's not even attractive by Valorian standards," added the Ilari representative, her mental projections flickering with disdain. "Surely you can see that she is physically inadequate." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. He had fought alongside soldiers of every shape and size, had seen courage in the most unexpected places. The alien concept of beauty meant nothing to him, but their casual cruelty sparked something fierce in his chest. "I have made my choice," he repeated, his voice carrying the steel that had made him legendary on the battlefield. The young lady in the corner. "I would like to speak with her." The council leader's tentacles writhed in obvious distress. "General Kane, please reconsider. The Valorians are a minor species with little to offer. Their female is, well, she lacks the physical attributes that your species might find appealing. We were told humans prefer tall, slender forms." Through the viewing wall, Marcus could see the chosen female's reaction. Her eyes had widened in shock, and she was looking around as if convinced there had been some mistake. The other females were staring at her with expressions ranging from confusion to outright disgust. "Perhaps," said the Korthak warrior diplomat, her scales rippling with barely contained aggression, "the human general is making a jest. Surely he cannot seriously consider bonding with such an unfortunate specimen." That was the final straw. Marcus had spent 3 years watching good soldiers die for the freedom of people who now treated a young woman like garbage based on her appearance. He stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate attention. "I don't know what kind of societies you come from," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber with military precision, "but where I come from, we judge people by their character, not their body shape. I've seen beautiful people do terrible things, and I've seen ordinary people perform acts of incredible heroism. I choose her, and I don't need to justify that choice to anyone." The chamber erupted again, but Marcus was no longer listening. He was watching the Valorian female through the wall, seeing the tears of gratitude that sparkled in her dark eyes. She pressed her hand against the transparent barrier, and for a moment, it felt like the most honest interaction he had experienced since arriving at this political circus. What the council didn't know, what none of them could know, was that Marcus Kane had always been able to see past the surface. It was what made him a great general and perhaps would make him a good husband. He had already made his choice, and no amount of alien politics would change his mind. The private meeting chamber was smaller and more intimate than the grand council hall, but the tension was just as thick. Marcus sat across from the Valorian female, whose name he had learned was Lyra Mothkai. The translation device between them hummed quietly, though he noticed she seemed to understand some of his words before they were translated. "You don't have to do this," Lyra said softly, her voice carrying a musical quality that the technology couldn't quite replicate. "I know why they brought me here. My people thought it was an honor, but I understand now. I'm the safe choice, the one no other species would want to claim." Marcus studied her face. Up close, he could see the intelligence that sparkled in her dark eyes, the gentle curve of her smile that suggested both wisdom and pain. The Valorians were known throughout the galaxy for their emotional intelligence and their ability to form deep, lasting bonds, but they were also dismissed as physically weak and aesthetically displeasing by the more aggressive species. "Tell me about yourself," Marcus said, ignoring her self-deprecating comment. "Not what the council files say. Tell me who you are." Lyra blinked in surprise. You actually want to know?" I wouldn't have asked otherwise. For the first time since he had entered the chamber, Lyra sat up straighter. "I'm a xenobiologist and cultural anthropologist. I've spent the last 10 years studying the interaction between different species, trying to understand how beings with completely different evolutionary backgrounds can work together. I speak 17 languages, and I've written 3 papers on interspecies cooperation theory. And," Marcus prompted, sensing there was more. "And I volunteered to come here," she admitted, her cheeks flushing a deeper gold. "My people told me I was too young, too inexperienced, too unsuitable. But I believed that if I could help forge a connection between humans and Valorians, it might prove that we have value beyond our physical appearance." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "You volunteered to marry a complete stranger for the good of your people?" "Yes." Her voice was steady, but he could see the uncertainty in her eyes. "Though I admit I hadn't expected you to actually choose me. The other delegates have made it clear that I'm not what most species consider attractive. Let me tell you something about attraction," Marcus said, his voice taking on the tone he used when teaching young officers. "I've served with thousands of soldiers over the years. Some were classically handsome, others were scarred and weathered. But the ones I remember, the ones I'd trust with my life, were the ones with character, courage, integrity, intelligence. Those qualities shine brighter than any physical feature. Lyra's eyes widened. You really mean that? I don't say things I don't mean. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Lyra spoke again. May I ask you something, General Kane? Marcus, and yes. Why did you really choose me? And please don't say it was because of my character. You've known me for less than an hour. Marcus considered his answer carefully. Because when I looked at you through that wall, you were the only one who wasn't performing. Everyone else was putting on a show, trying to impress me with their abilities or their beauty. You were just being yourself. That told me more about your character than any demonstration could. I was actually trying to make myself invisible, Lyra confessed with a rueful smile. I was hoping you'd choose someone else and I could go home with my dignity intact. And now? Now I'm terrified, she said honestly, but also curious. You're not what I expected from a human general. What did you expect? Someone more brutal, I suppose. The stories of human warfare have spread throughout the galaxy. Your species' capacity for violence is legendary, but you seem, she paused, searching for the right word, kind. Marcus chuckled. I can be brutal when I need to be, but war and marriage are different things. In war, you destroy your enemies. In marriage, you build something together. Is that what you want to do? Build something together? The question hung between them, heavy with possibility. Marcus realized that for the first time since entering this chamber, he was seeing this arrangement as more than a political necessity. Lyra was intelligent, thoughtful, and possessed a strength of character that impressed him. I think I'd like to try, he said finally, if you're willing. Before Lyra could respond, the chamber door chimed. The Thraxian ambassador entered without waiting for permission, his compound eyes glittering with agitation. General Kane, the council requests your immediate presence. There have been complications. Marcus stood, his military instincts taking over. What kind of complications? Several of the rejected species are questioning your choice. They suggest that perhaps your selection was made in error or under duress. They demand a formal explanation. They demand. Marcus's voice carried a dangerous edge that made even the towering insectoid take a step back. Perhaps poor choice of words. The ambassador backtracked quickly. They request clarification of your decision-making process. Lyra had also stood, her face pale. They want you to change your mind. That's not going to happen, Marcus said firmly. Then to her surprise, he offered her his arm. Shall we go explain to them together why I made the right choice? The gesture was simple, but profoundly significant in galactic culture. By offering his arm in public, Marcus was declaring his respect for her as an equal partner. Lyra's eyes filled with tears as she accepted it. You don't understand what you're doing, the Thraxian protested. The political ramifications, I understand perfectly, Marcus interrupted. I'm making it clear that my choice isn't up for debate. Lyra is my intended bride, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me personally. As they walked through the corridors toward the council chamber, Lyra whispered, You're going to make enemies of some very powerful species. Wouldn't be the first time, Marcus replied. Besides, if they're the kind of people who judge others based on appearance, I probably don't want them as allies anyway. Your species really is different from the others, isn't it? Marcus glanced down at her. How so? Most species choose mates based on genetic superiority, political advantage, or physical perfection. You chose me because I wasn't pretending to be something I'm not. Maybe that's exactly what humanity needs right now. Marcus said, someone genuine in a galaxy full of people playing games. As they approached the council chamber, the sound of raised voices could be heard even through the thick doors. Whatever was waiting for them inside wasn't going to be pleasant, but Marcus found himself oddly looking forward to the challenge. He had faced down alien armies. He could certainly handle some disappointed diplomats. Beside him, Lyra squeezed his arm gently. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For seeing me. Really seeing me? Marcus smiled. Thank you for being worth seeing. The council chamber had transformed into a battlefield of words and wounded pride. As Marcus and Lyra entered, the arguing voices fell silent, but the tension remained thick enough to cut with a blade. The rejected candidates stood with their respective delegations, their postures radiating indignation and disbelief. The Alari female, whose name was Zephyra Brightmind, stepped forward first. Her silver skin gleamed under the chamber's lights, and her telepathic projections created a subtle aura of superiority around her. General Kane, surely you understand the gravity of your error. The Alari Confederation offers humanity access to trade routes worth trillions of credits, advanced medical technology, and telepathic communication networks that span half the galaxy. Marcus remained silent, his arms still linked with Lyra's. He could feel her trembling slightly, but her head was held high. The Korthak warrior, Scarsinger Vexa, slammed her clawed fist against her scaled chest. The Korthak Empire has stood undefeated for 3,000 years. Our alliance would make humanity warriors worthy of legend. Instead, you choose weakness disguised as intelligence. The Whisper Folk, added their ethereal representative in a voice like wind chimes, possess technologies that could extend human lifespans by centuries. We offer immortality itself. One by one, the rejected species listed their offerings, each trying to outbid the others. The chamber filled with promises of wealth, power, and technological advancement that could transform humanity's place in the galaxy. Through it all, Marcus stood silent, his expression unreadable. Lyra could feel the weight of every gaze upon her, measuring her worth against the magnificent offers being presented. She started to speak, perhaps to withdraw her acceptance and spare Marcus the political consequences, but his slight squeeze of her arm kept her quiet. Finally, the council leader raised several tentacles for silence. General Kane, you have heard what these noble species offer humanity. The Valorians, while respected for their intelligence, cannot match such generosity. Perhaps you would reconsider. Marcus looked around the chamber slowly, taking in each face, each species representative. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. You want to know why I chose Lyra? You really want to understand my reasoning? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Then let me tell you about the war, Marcus began, his voice taking on the cadence of a storyteller. 3 years ago, when the Zephyrian Empire attacked the outer colonies, humanity was alone. We had no allies, no advanced technologies, no telepathic networks or warrior traditions. We had nothing but ourselves. The chamber fell completely silent. The Zephyrians thought we would be easy prey. We were new to the galaxy, primitive by your standards. They expected us to surrender after the first attack. Marcus's eyes hardened. They were wrong. He began to pace, his voice growing stronger. Do you know what we discovered during that war? We learned that all your advanced technologies, all your superior genetics, all your ancient warrior traditions meant nothing when faced with human determination. We fought with outdated weapons against superior forces and won because we never gave up. The alien delegates shifted uncomfortably. The war with the Zephyrians had shocked the galaxy. Humanity's victory had forced everyone to recalculate their understanding of what made a species strong. But more importantly, Marcus continued, we learned who our real friends were. When the Zephyrians were slaughtering human colonies, where were all these generous offers? Where were the Alari trade routes when our supply lines were cut? Where were the Korthak warriors when our soldiers were dying? Where was Whisperfolk technology when our medical facilities were overwhelmed? The silence was deafening. I'll tell you where they were, Marcus said, his voice rising. They were watching, waiting to see who would win before deciding which side to support. Every species in this room sat on the sidelines while humans died. Lyra's grip on his arm tightened. She was beginning to understand where this was leading. Every species except one, Marcus said, turning to smile at Lyra. The Valorians were the only people who sent aid during the war. Not weapons or soldiers, they're not warriors. But they sent medical supplies, food, and most importantly, they sent their xenobiologists and cultural experts to help us understand our enemies. A shocked murmur ran through the chamber. Several delegates were frantically consulting their data tablets, checking records. The Valorian government condemned the Zephyrian attacks from day one, Marcus continued. They were the only species willing to risk Zephyrian retaliation to stand with humanity. Their relief ship saved thousands of lives in the outer colonies. The Thraxian ambassador's mandibles clicked nervously. General, those were unauthorized actions by a few Valorian individuals. Their government maintained official neutrality. Did they? Marcus asked, pulling out his own data tablet. Because according to my intelligence reports, those unauthorized individuals included 3 government ministers, a dozen university professors, and the Valorian chancellor's own daughter. They might have called it unofficial, but they made sure those supply convoys had escort ships and diplomatic immunity. The chamber erupted in surprised chatter. This information had clearly been kept quiet during the war. Lyra stared at Marcus in amazement. "How did you know all that?" "I make it my business to know who my friends are," Marcus replied loudly enough for everyone to hear. "And when I looked through that wall at all of you yesterday, I saw representatives of species who offer me everything now that the war is over. But I also saw the daughter of people who helped us when we had nothing to offer in return." The weight of his words settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. The political calculations that had seemed so important moments before suddenly appeared petty and opportunistic. "You see," Marcus continued, his voice softening as he looked at Lyra, "you all keep talking about what your species can offer humanity. But Lyra's people already proved what they were willing to give. They risked everything to help strangers because it was the right thing to do." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "My father was one of those ministers. He nearly lost his position for supporting the relief efforts." "I know," Marcus said gently. "I also know that you personally worked on 17 different relief convoys, including the one that evacuated the children from New Athens colony before the Zephyrians glassed it." The admission sent another wave of shock through the chamber. The evacuation of New Athens was considered one of the most heroic actions of the war. That the quiet Valorian woman had been involved was news to everyone present. The Alari representative's projection flickered with uncertainty. "General Kane, we had no knowledge of Miss Mothkai's involvement in—" "Of course you didn't," Marcus interrupted. "Because you weren't paying attention to the small species doing the right thing. You were too busy calculating which side was going to win." The council leader's tentacles writhed in distress. "General, surely you understand that maintaining neutrality during conflicts is standard diplomatic protocol." "Is it?" Marcus asked. "Then explain why my choice has caused such an uproar. If you really believed in diplomatic neutrality, you'd respect my decision instead of trying to change it." The logic was inescapable, and the chamber fell silent again. Marcus turned to address the assembly one final time. "I choose Lyra Mothkai not despite her people being small and overlooked, but because of it. They proved that strength isn't measured in military might or economic power. It's measured in the courage to do what's right when nobody's watching. That's the kind of alliance humanity wants. That's the kind of partnership we need." The transformation in the chamber was remarkable. The righteous indignation of the rejected species had given way to thoughtful consideration. Some delegates were already conferring with their assistants, no doubt reconsidering their own diplomatic strategies. As Marcus finished speaking, Lyra stepped forward, her voice clear and strong despite her tears. "Thank you all for this opportunity to speak. I hope that my marriage to General Kane will be the beginning of deeper friendships between all our species. The Valorians have always believed that true strength comes from unity, understanding, and compassion. We look forward to helping humanity find its place in our galactic community." The speech was diplomatically perfect, offering friendship to everyone while firmly establishing her position as Marcus's chosen bride. Even the most disappointed species representatives nodded respectfully. The council leader raised her tentacles again. "Then it is settled. The unity bond between General Marcus Kane of humanity and Lyra Mothkai of Valoria will proceed as planned." As the formal session ended and delegates began to file out, Marcus and Lyra remained standing together, both realizing that their arrangement had evolved into something much more meaningful than either had expected. 3 days had passed since the dramatic council session, and Marcus found himself in the observation deck of the diplomatic station, watching stars wheel slowly past the viewport. The Unity Bond ceremony was scheduled for tomorrow, but tonight he needed time to think. The political ramifications of his choice were still unfolding across the galaxy. "I thought I might find you here." Lyra's voice came from behind him. She had changed from her formal diplomatic robes into something more casual, a flowing garment that reminded Marcus of Earth clothing. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, not turning from the window. "Too much excitement, I think." She moved to stand beside him, her presence warm and comforting. "The Valorian delegation received 17 diplomatic communications today. Apparently several smaller species want to follow our example." Marcus smiled. "Good. Maybe this galaxy needs more examples of choosing character over convenience." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the cosmic dance outside. During the past few days they had spent hours talking, learning about each other's worlds and cultures. Marcus had discovered that Lyra was not only brilliant but also funny, kind, and surprisingly brave. Her work during the war had been far more extensive than even he had known. "Marcus," Lyra said softly, "can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Are you ever afraid that you made the wrong choice?" "Not politically, I understand why that makes sense. But personally, you're binding yourself to someone you barely know from a species that's, well, different from yours in every way." Marcus turned to look at her properly. In the starlight, her golden skin seemed to glow softly, and her dark eyes held depths he was still discovering. "Are you asking if I'm having second thoughts?" "I suppose I am." He considered his answer carefully. "I was married before, you know, to a human woman, Sarah. We were together for 8 years before she died in a transport accident." Lyra's expression softened. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. She was beautiful by human standards, tall, athletic, confident. Everyone said we were perfect together." Marcus's voice grew quiet. "But toward the end, we were like strangers living in the same house. We had grown in different directions, wanted different things. We loved each other, but we weren't compatible anymore." "What does that have to do with us?" "Everything." Marcus turned to face her fully. "With Sarah, I thought I knew what I was getting. We came from the same world, the same culture, the same species, but I was wrong about who she really was. With you, I have no illusions. I know we're different. I know there will be challenges, but I also know that you're exactly who you appear to be." Lyra's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "You make it sound so simple. Maybe it is simple. Maybe we've all been making it too complicated." Marcus reached out and gently took her hand. "Tell me something, Lyra. If you could choose anyone in the galaxy to spend your life with, anyone at all, what would you want them to be like?" She was quiet for a long moment, considering. "Kind," she said finally. "Intelligent. Someone who sees beyond the surface. Someone who does the right thing even when it's difficult. Someone who makes me want to be better than I am." "And what about you makes someone want to choose you?" "I don't know," she admitted. "I've never thought about it that way." "I have," Marcus said. "You're brave enough to volunteer for something terrifying because you believe it might help your people. You're compassionate enough to risk your life helping strangers during a war. You're intelligent enough to see through political games to the truth underneath. And you're honest enough to admit your fears instead of pretending everything is fine." Lyra looked down at their joined hands. "When you put it like that, like what?" "Like maybe I'm worth choosing after all." Before Marcus could respond, the observation deck doors hissed open. The Thraxian ambassador entered, looking agitated. "General Kane, Miss Mothkai, I apologize for the intrusion, but there's been a development." Marcus immediately shifted into military mode. "What kind of development?" "A Zephyrian diplomatic vessel has just dropped out of hyperspace. They're requesting an emergency audience with the Council." Lyra gasped. "The Zephyrians?" "But they're our enemies. Why would they come here?" "Unknown," the ambassador replied. "But they claim to have information about General Kane's upcoming unity bond that the Council needs to hear." Marcus felt his blood run cold. "Are they threatening the ceremony?" "They won't say. They only insist on speaking before the unity bond is completed." The ambassador's compound eyes clicked nervously. "The council leader has agreed to see them tomorrow morning, just hours before your ceremony." After the ambassador left, Marcus and Lyra sat down heavily in the observation lounge chairs. The romantic moment had been thoroughly shattered. "What do you think they want?" Lyra asked. "Nothing good," Marcus replied grimly. "The Zephyrians don't do anything without a reason. If they're willing to come here, to enemy territory, it's because they think they can gain something significant. Could they stop the ceremony? Not legally, but they might have information that could complicate things." Marcus ran his hand through his hair. A gesture Lyra had learned meant he was worried. "During the war there were incidents, classified operations that I can't discuss. If they have evidence of something the council would find objectionable..." "Marcus." Lyra's voice was firm. "Look at me." He turned to meet her gaze. "Whatever they have, whatever they think they know, it doesn't change what happened in that council chamber 3 days ago. You chose me for reasons that had nothing to do with politics or military strategy. Even if this derails the unity bond, you showed the galaxy something important. And what's that? That humans judge people by their actions, not their appearance or their species' power. That humanity values loyalty and compassion over opportunism. She smiled, and Marcus realized it was the first time he had seen her truly confident. You've already changed how the smaller species see themselves. Several delegations have approached my people about cultural exchanges and mutual aid agreements. Marcus stared at her in amazement. You're not worried about tomorrow? Terrified, she admitted. But not because of the Zephyrians. I'm scared because I've realized something over the past few days, or what's that? I'm falling in love with you. The admission hung in the air between them, beautiful and terrifying. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat as he processed her words. Lyra, I know it's too soon, she said quickly. I know this whole situation is artificial and political and complicated. But when I'm with you, I forget about all of that. You make me feel like I'm worth something, like my thoughts and feelings matter, like I'm beautiful even though I know I'm not. You are beautiful, Marcus said firmly. Maybe not by conventional standards, but you're beautiful to me. Your mind, your spirit, your courage, everything about you is beautiful. Do you think you could love me too? Eventually. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, not because he was unsure, but because he wanted to give her the honest answer she deserved. I think I'm already halfway there, he said finally. Maybe more than halfway. They moved closer together on the lounge, and when Marcus put his arm around her, Lyra nestled against his side with a contentment that surprised them both. Whatever the Zephyrians have planned, Marcus said softly, we'll face it together. Together, Lyra agreed, and for the first time since this whole ordeal began, she truly believed they could handle anything the galaxy threw at them. Outside the viewport, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the small dramas of the beings who traveled between them. But inside the observation deck, two people from different worlds had found something worth fighting for, something worth choosing again and again, no matter what tomorrow might bring. The emergency council session convened at dawn, ship's time. Marcus sat in the defendant's chair, a position that felt uncomfortably familiar from his military tribunals. Beside him, Lyra maintained perfect diplomatic composure, despite the obvious stress of the situation. The Zephyrian delegation had arrived in force, 3 tall, reptilian beings whose scaled skin gleamed with an oily iridescence under the chamber's lights. The Zephyrian war speaker, identified as Sisthar the Truthbringer, stepped forward with the fluid grace of a predator. His translated voice carried a sibilant undertone that made everyone in the chamber uncomfortable. Esteemed council, he began, we come bearing grave news about the human known as Marcus Kane. This being, whom you honor with Unity Bond privileges, is responsible for war crimes that violate 17 different galactic conventions. A murmur of shock rippled through the chamber. Marcus felt Lyra's hand slip into his, offering silent support. That's a serious accusation, the council leader said, her tentacles writhing with agitation. Do you have evidence? We do. Sisthar activated a holographic projector. Behold the fate of the Zephyrian research station, Kethmore. The hologram showed the twisted remains of a space station, its hull breached and blackened. Bodies floated in the vacuum, their forms clearly non-combatant researchers and technicians. This facility was conducting legitimate scientific research when General Kane ordered its destruction. 347 innocent Zephyrians died, including 73 younglings in the education sector. The image was horrific, and several council members recoiled. Marcus felt his stomach tighten, but his expression remained impassive. Furthermore, Sisthar continued, the general employed forbidden biological weapons causing slow, agonizing deaths. These actions violate the Kepler Accords on humane warfare. The Thraxian ambassador turned to Marcus, his compound eyes reflecting disappointment. General Kane, how do you respond to these allegations? Marcus stood slowly, his military bearing evident in every movement. The Kethmore station was not conducting scientific research. It was a biological weapons facility. Lies, Sisthar hissed. You have no proof of these claims. Don't I? Marcus activated his own projector, displaying a series of intelligence reports. These are intercepts from Zephyrian communications, decoded by our best cryptographers. The Kethmore station was developing a virus specifically designed to target human DNA. The council chamber fell silent as the evidence appeared before them. The documents clearly showed research into species-specific biological warfare. Your innocent researchers, Marcus continued, We're developing a weapon that would have wiped out every human in the galaxy, while leaving other species untouched. The younglings in your education sector were actually being trained to deploy these weapons on civilian populations. Sesthar's scales rippled with anger. Even if this were true, the attack violated protocols for dealing with biological threats. You should have contacted the Council for assistance. Should I have? Marcus asked. How long would that have taken? Days, weeks? Meanwhile, that station was preparing to launch contaminated probes toward Earth and the outer colonies. We had evidence they were less than 48 hours from deployment. The Illyri representative leaned forward. General, what proof do you have of this timeline? Marcus displayed another document. This is a communication from the station commander to Zephyrian High Command, dated 2 days before our attack. It reads, final testing complete. Awaiting authorization for primary deployment. Estimate 72 hours for full Earth contamination upon release. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Even the council leader's usually calm demeanor cracked as she absorbed the implications. As for biological weapons, Marcus continued, we used no such thing. The station was destroyed by conventional explosives. The deaths you're showing resulted from explosive decompression and vacuum exposure. Terrible but instantaneous. Sesthar's confidence began to waver. The slow deaths, the agony, was caused by your own biological agents, Marcus said coldly. When we breached the containment systems, some of your research subjects were released. Your own weapons killed your own people. The truth hit the chamber like a physical blow. The Zephyrians had accused Marcus of war crimes for destroying a facility that was preparing to commit genocide. Their own biological weapons had caused the suffering they blamed on him. Lyra stood beside Marcus, her voice clear and strong. May I address the council? The council leader nodded, still processing the revelations. 3 days ago, the representatives of multiple species questioned General Kane's choice to marry me. They suggested that my people had nothing to offer, that we were weak and insignificant. But this is exactly why the general's choice was correct. She gestured toward the evidence still floating in the air. The Zephyrians came here today hoping to use accusations of war crimes to shame humanity and break our unity bond. They thought they could manipulate you with false moral outrage, but they underestimated human integrity. Her voice grew stronger, more confident. General Kane could have hidden this information. He could have classified it and let the accusations stand, rather than reveal military intelligence. Instead, he chose to tell the truth, even though it meant exposing humanity's intelligence capabilities to potential enemies. The implications of her words sank in around the chamber. Marcus had just compromised significant military advantages to defend his honor and their marriage. Furthermore, Lyra continued, this attack saved lives across the galaxy. If the Zephyrian biological weapon had been deployed, it wouldn't have stopped with humans. Biological agents mutate, evolve. What starts as a human-specific virus could have eventually threatened every species here. The council leader's tentacles curled thoughtfully. Miss Mothkai makes an excellent point. The precedent of species-specific biological weapons threatens us all. Sesthar realized his strategy was collapsing. The council cannot simply take the human's word. They don't have to, interrupted the Korthak representative. Our intelligence services have been tracking Zephyrian biological research for years. We can confirm that Kethmore was indeed a weapons facility. As can we, added the Whisperfolk delegate. Our deep space sensors detected biological agents in the debris field after the station's destruction. One by one, the other species confirmed aspects of Marcus's account. The Zephyrians had walked into a trap of their own making, expecting to find allies in their accusations, but instead discovering that their enemies had been monitoring their illegal activities all along. The council leader rose to her full height. Her tentacles spread wide in a gesture of final judgment. War Speaker Sesthar, your accusations are not only false but reveal your own species' willingness to commit genocide. This council finds General Kane's actions to be not only justified but heroic. However, she continued, turning to Marcus, we are troubled by your sacrifice of military intelligence to defend your personal honor. While admirable, it may have compromised human security. Marcus smiled grimly. Actually, it didn't. Everything I showed you today was already known to your intelligence services. We've been sharing this information through back channels for months. I simply made it public. The masterstroke was revealed. Marcus had known the other species were already aware of Zephyrian biological weapons programs. By making the information public, he had forced them to take an official stance against such weapons while simultaneously defending his character. In other words, Lyra said with obvious pride, my future husband just maneuvered the entire Galactic Council into condemning biological warfare while protecting his own reputation and securing stronger intelligence-sharing agreements. The chamber fell silent as the delegates absorbed the full scope of what had just happened. Marcus had turned a Zephyrian attack into a diplomatic victory for humanity and a stronger foundation for galactic cooperation. Esthar and his delegation were escorted from the chamber in disgrace, their accusations not only disproven, but revealed as attempts to cover their own war crimes. As the emergency session ended, the council leader approached Marcus and Lyra. Your Unity Bond ceremony will proceed as planned this afternoon. After today's events, I suspect it will be the most well-attended diplomatic wedding in galactic history. Marcus looked down at Lyra, who was beaming with pride and joy. Ready to marry a war criminal? He asked with a grin. I'd rather marry a war hero, she replied, standing on her toes to kiss his cheek, which it turns out is exactly what I'm getting. The Unity Bond ceremony took place in the great amphitheater of the diplomatic station, a vast chamber that could accommodate representatives from dozens of species. What should have been a simple political formality had transformed into the most significant diplomatic event in recent galactic history. Every major species had sent delegations, and the smaller species that rarely attended such gatherings had come in unprecedented numbers. Marcus stood at the altar, wearing the formal dress uniform of the Human Space Command. The deep blue fabric was adorned with ribbons and decorations that told the story of his military career. But today they seemed less important than the simple golden band he carried in his pocket. Lyra approached down the aisle escorted by her father, Chancellor Dorn Mothkai, whose proud smile could be seen from across the vast chamber. She wore traditional Valorian unity robes, flowing garments that shimmered with threads of silver and gold, representing the bringing together of two lives. Her hair was adorned with small crystalline flowers that caught the light and sent tiny rainbows dancing around her face. But it was her expression that took Marcus's breath away. Gone was the uncertain, self-deprecating woman he had first met. In her place walked someone who radiated confidence and joy, someone who knew exactly how valued and loved she was. The ceremony itself was a blend of traditions from both species. The Valorian components emphasized emotional bonding and the joining of souls, while the human elements focused on commitment and partnership. The council leader, serving as the officiant, spoke in the ancient ceremonial language that predated galactic standard. We gather today to witness not just the union of two individuals, but the bonding of two species in friendship and understanding, she intoned. This unity bond represents hope for a galaxy where difference is celebrated rather than merely tolerated. When the time came for vows, Marcus spoke first, his voice carrying clearly through the amphitheater without amplification. Lyra, 3 days ago I was asked to choose a bride to cement humanity's place in the galactic community. What I found instead was a partner who showed me what humanity could become. You taught me that strength comes not from power or status, but from the courage to stand up for what's right. I choose you not because of what you can offer humanity, but because of who you are. I promise to truly see you for the rest of our lives together. Lyra's voice trembled slightly as she began her own vows, but grew stronger with each word. Marcus, when I volunteered for this ceremony, I thought I was making a sacrifice for my people. I believed I was the safe choice, the one no one else would want. But you showed me that I was wrong about everything. You chose me not despite my flaws, but because you saw past them to something worth choosing. You gave me the greatest gift anyone can give. You made me believe in my own worth. I promise to be worthy of that belief and to love you with all the strength and intelligence I possess. The exchange of rings was performed according to human tradition, with each placing a simple golden band on the other's finger. But when they sealed their bond with the Valorian ceremony of mind touch, a brief telepathic connection facilitated by Lyra's natural abilities, something unexpected happened. For just a moment, Marcus felt what Lyra felt. He experienced her joy, her wonder, her overwhelming gratitude for being chosen and loved. But underneath that, he sensed something else, a deep well of strength and determination that she had never been allowed to express fully. Lyra, For her part, felt Marcus's mind like a fortress of honor and commitment. She sensed his genuine love for her, but also his respect for her as an equal partner. There was no condescension, no sense that he saw her as lesser. To him, she was magnificent exactly as she was. When the connection ended, both were left with tears in their eyes and a sense of completion neither had expected. By the ancient laws of unity and the modern principles of partnership, the council leader declared, "I pronounce you bonded in mind, heart, and spirit. May your union bring prosperity to both your peoples and peace to the galaxy." The applause that followed was thunderous, but it was different from the polite diplomatic approval usually heard in such ceremonies. This was genuine celebration, as if everyone present understood they had witnessed something important and rare. As Marcus and Lyra walked back down the aisle together, delegates from across the galaxy offered their congratulations, but the most meaningful moments came from the smaller species, representatives who had never before seen one of their own, chosen over more powerful alternatives. The reception that followed was held in the station's main ballroom, a space that had been transformed into a garden representing both Earth and Valoria. The conversations that took place there would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. General Kane, the Thraxian ambassador, approached. "I owe you an apology. I failed to understand the significance of your choice." "No apology necessary," Marcus replied, his arm around Lyra's waist. "You were protecting the political process. I respect that. Nevertheless, I have learned something valuable today. The Thraxian Hive wishes to propose a cultural exchange program with both humanity and Valoria. We believe there is much we can learn from species that value character over conquest." Similar conversations were happening throughout the ballroom. The Whisper folk were discussing medical technology sharing with Valorian biologists. The Korthak warriors were expressing interest in human military tactics that relied on adaptability rather than raw strength. Even the proud Ilari were reconsidering their approach to diplomacy. But perhaps the most significant conversation took place between Chancellor Mothkai and the human ambassador. "Your son-in-law has started something that will ripple across the galaxy for years to come," the human diplomat observed. "My daughter has been preparing for this her entire life," the Chancellor replied with obvious pride. "She knew that someday someone would see past our physical appearance to recognize what we truly have to offer. She just never imagined it would be a human general." "What do the Valorians have to offer?" the ambassador asked curiously. "Hope," came the simple reply. "In a galaxy obsessed with power and dominance, we offer the possibility that wisdom and compassion might actually matter. That small species with big hearts might have a voice in galactic affairs." Later that evening, as the celebration finally wound down, Marcus and Lyra found themselves alone on the observation deck, where they had shared their first real conversation. The stars outside looked the same, but everything else had changed. "Any regrets?" Marcus asked, pulling his new wife close against the artificial chill of the environmental systems. "Only one," Lyra said, snuggling into his warmth. "What's that?" "I regret that we'll never have another first day as husband and wife." "Today was perfect," Marcus laughed. "I think I can promise you that life with me will never be boring. Military careers tend to involve a lot of unexpected adventures." "Good," Lyra said firmly. "I've spent my whole life being careful and quiet and trying not to cause trouble. I think I'm ready for some adventures." They stood together watching the stars, two people from different worlds who had found something rare and precious in each other. Behind them, the diplomatic station hummed with activity as delegates prepared for a future that none of them had anticipated. The unity bond between Marcus Kane and Lyra Mothkai would indeed become legendary throughout the galaxy. Not because it prevented wars or created vast trade empires, but because it proved that in a universe full of calculated political marriages, genuine love and respect could still triumph. Children from dozens of species would grow up hearing the story of the human general who chose the fat one and discovered that true beauty lies in courage, intelligence, and character. It became a tale that reminded everyone that worth is not measured by appearance or power, but by the content of one's heart. And in the years that followed, as Marcus and Lyra worked together to build bridges between species and create new models for interstellar cooperation, they never forgot the lesson of their first meeting, that the most important choices in life are often the ones that seem impossible. To everyone else, their love story became proof that humanity's greatest strength was not their military prowess or technological advancement, but their ability to see potential where others saw only limitation. It was the most human thing of all, choosing heart over politics, character over convenience, and love over everything else the galaxy had to offer.